Hey, Sophia.
Hello, it is such an honor to be here at the Best You Virtual Expo. I am Sophia Marie Lightfoot from Queensland, Australia. And I believe my purpose in life is to inspire, uplift, and empower others by being the most authentic, loving expression of who I am, by sharing my story, and by sharing the skills that I have learned in overcoming all the obstacles in my own life so that I can help make someone else's life easier. I secretly struggled with overeating for 35 years. What that looked like was most afternoons and evenings when I would come home from work, I would start snacking and snacking. And then as I was cooking dinner, I'd be still snacking. And then I'd eat my dinner, I'd have seconds, I'd have thirds, I'd keep on snacking. And while this was all happening, I'd think, what am I doing? Why am I eating? I'm not even hungry. And another voice inside my head would say, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Just eat. And I'd keep on eating until suddenly it stopped. And I felt full. And I just didn't want to eat anymore. And then I'd feel shameful and I'd feel guilty and I'd feel confused. And I'd think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I eat like a normal person? I'm an intelligent woman. How do I have no control over food? And I'd vow that the next day I wouldn't do this. And sometimes I could go 2 or 3 days, but then it would happen again. When I was a child, I often heard the adults say, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I used to think, but what's the purpose of having a cake? Isn't it to eat? It really confused me. Yet I took on that message and I stopped asking for what I truly wanted. So that when I was 13 years old, which was when I really began overeating, my parents asked me to make a decision, to make a choice. They said, Sophia, you're in high school now. It's time for you to choose. Would you like to be a classical ballerina, or would you like to focus on your studies and getting into university and becoming a doctor or a lawyer and having a career in that way? And at that time, I had become a woman in this body around the age of 10. I'd been dancing since I was 7. And oh my gosh, I loved dancing. My mother had read me this book called The Little Ballerina, and it was filled with these gorgeous pictures of smiling, happy children in leotards and tutus. And I asked her, can I please learn ballet? And when I went into that studio, I was at home. I loved everything about it. I loved rehearsing. I loved being on stage. I didn't know I was supposed to be nervous. Years later, when I would hear surfers talking about that feeling of ecstasy that they felt when they caught the perfect wave, I'd think, that's what I feel when I'm dancing. But around the age of 10, I got my menstrual cycle. I started growing breasts that bounced when I jetted. I started growing underarm hair and bikini line hair and leg hair. And all the other children in my dance class were flat-chested and really petite. And I felt like an elephant amongst the fairies. So when my parents gave me that choice, I thought, well, I don't think I want to be a classical ballerina. I better focus on my studies. But what I didn't have the courage to ask for, and what I never shared with my parents, was that I actually wanted to be in musical theatre. I grew up watching Saturday movie matinees with Gene Kelly and Sid Charisse and Fred and Ginger and all the Busby Berkeley dancers. And I dreamed of having a career on stage, singing and dancing and acting just like all those beautiful people that I saw on my TV screen. But I kept that inside and I betrayed myself. So the following year, I went to school and I didn't have ballet after school on Wednesday and Monday and Friday or Saturday mornings. And I felt restless and I felt bored, and I took up tennis, I took up athletics, but nothing filled that void. My grades had been straight A average, and I got my first C. My grades began to plummet, as did my self-esteem. The boys would taunt me, "Here comes thunder thighs," and "ski jump," because of my nose, which started growing a bump around that age as well. My crush in year 10 said I was a fat cow and that my face looked like a cracked brick. And it did, because I had really acute acne. I kept on eating secretly and feeling out of control, and that continued for years and years. And I kept on compromising and not asking for what I really wanted, but putting my needs last and other people's needs first. In 2006, I was living in a small coal mining town in central Queensland with my husband and 3 beautiful young children. I was deeply unhappy, and I went to see a counsellor and finally convinced my husband to come with me. And on that first visit the counselor pointed his finger at me and said, "You're the problem. This is your fault." And I felt the earth tilt. In fact, walking home from that counseling session, pushing the pram with my 6-month-old, I was holding onto the pram to try and walk upright. I literally felt like the world had become unhinged. And shortly after that, my husband and I had a big argument. I slammed the front door. I left my baby and my 2 sons, aged 3 and 5, inside, and I got in the car. And I went to drive into a tree. Marissa Peer talks about the cause of depression being not following your heart's desires and a harsh, critical inner voice. And that day, my harsh, critical inner voice saved my life, because as I was driving along trying to find a tree, that voice piped up and it became my best friend. "Sophia, you're going to screw this up, just like you've screwed up everything else in your life. You are not going to hit the tree straight. You're going to sideswipe it. You'll make yourself a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, or you'll end up on life support and your children will have to turn off the switch. And you're going to create even more misery in the lives of your family. Don't do it. You can't do anything right." So I took the car and I drove back home. And over time, I made some really beautiful friends in that little town. And one of them took me to her doctor, who diagnosed me with clinical depression and anxiety. The counselor who I had seen left and was replaced by 2 amazing psychologists. He taught me many skills, thinking skills, life skills, communication skills. I went back to university. I got my teaching degree, which had also been a dream of mine. And I began working as a teacher when my daughter began school. A couple of weeks in to that job, my husband and I separated, and a few months later, my children and I moved to another town with a beautiful community where we still live now. And we had a really good life where we were supported, we were safe, and we lived well. Everything was going well. And then in early 2017, I had another breakdown. I found myself feeling that same sickening sense of despair and hopelessness and helplessness. And I thought, this is crazy. After all the work I've done, how can I be in this place again? The very next day, I raised my arms to the ceiling and I said, enough. I am going to find out what on earth is wrong with me, and I'm going to fix it. I believe every problem has a solution. It was not long after that I connected with Marissa Peer and began studying rapid transformational therapy. Marissa Peer talks about there being 3 root causes for every problem we experience. One is the erroneous belief that I am not good enough. The other is the belief that I don't fit in or I don't belong. Somehow I'm different to everyone else. And the third is what I want is not available to me. When I realized and understood how, when, and where, and why I had created these erroneous beliefs in my own life, everything began to shift and change. And now, for over 2 years, I haven't been overeating. I dance, I sing, and I act again. And most of all, I enjoy helping other women to break free from overeating, to become the boss of their own body and their own lives by creating a strong, loving relationship with themselves, with food, with eating, with their bodies. So I invite you to connect with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and I encourage you to reach out for help and keep on reaching out until you find the help that you need, until you find the solution to your problem. If the first person you go to is not the right one, keep looking, because the solution is available to you. And the right person will not only teach you the skills that you may have missed out on learning earlier in life, but will guide you to the answers you have within you. Secondly, ask for 100% of what you want, 100% of the time. Be prepared to get a no and be willing to negotiate. And thirdly, I want you to know that you can have your cake and eat it too. Cakes were made for eating. And remember, it's never too late to change. Thank you for sharing this time with me.